Is there an officer called Anastasia Sumbua in your department?
Yes, she's a...
What is her position?
She's a principal fire officer.
What is her qualification?
She's in theology.
Correct.
And
let's move to the next one. Just a minute.
Because disaster management...
Just a minute.
Yes, sir.
Just a minute.
Yes.
Is there somebody called Juliana Nziuki?
Correct.
What is her position?
I think she's also a principal, if I'm not wrong.
Yes. What is her qualification?
She has... I was just looking at it a minute ago.
So that it is not, Governor, seen that we just perpetuate fake news on the media. Yeah. And it is intended to help you reallocate these resources in a manner that will be most efficient for the people of Nairobi. Juliana Nziuki has a degree in theology as well.
Can you confirm that, Bramwell?
I'll go through the list.
Bramwell, can you confirm that?
I can confirm that, Chair.
Good. Okay. Let's go to Brian Kariuki, the Chief Fire Officer.
He's not Chief Fire Officer.
What is
there is no gentleman called Brian Kariuki.
He is, but he's not the Chief Fire Officer.
What is his position?
He's probably just part of the fire team.
What is his qualification?
I would have to check.
He is a library, is a degree in library studies. You will check with me. Yes. Lastly, Chair, Disaster Management Officer, Belinda Anyango. Is she there?
Yes, she is.
What is her position?
I wouldn't, but I would agree with whatever she...
No, Bramwell. You are not going to...
But, Chair, I need to clarify
Bramwell, order. Yes. We will put you on oath.
Yes.
If you proceed that way. Senator Sifuna?
Yes. Bramwell, Belinda has a degree in tours and travel.
Okay.
Yes, there is a mismatch of skills in your department. And when we bring them up, it's not that because we have anything against you or against these officers. They could be more useful in other departments.
What is your current structure for responding to disasters and emergencies like the ones that are facing us today?
Okay, so I'll have the Chief Officer just come and explain the structure of the disaster sector.
Senator Sifuna?
Chair, I really would want to dissuade members here from being advocates of any agency or entity.
And use the same advice to
members. People are dying in floods.
I know.
People are
together with this.
People are in refugee camps. Our children cannot go back to school.
Yes.
Since independence, this is the second time that schools have been suspended. Even in the 1982 coup, schools education was not suspended. So let us deal with this as a matter of national importance.
We are not saying
Governor Sakaja, please proceed.
It's an act of God. You cannot blame anybody.
Proceed, Governor.
You need to paint the actual picture. In Nairobi, nobody is going to be patient with you. It doesn't matter how many times you repeat that it's only been 1.5 years. This is one of those counties that you build the boat as you sail. Because nobody is going to wait for you. At the end of the day, somebody who requires those services, the roads, the medicine, the healthcare, is not going to sit back and say, oh, by the way, our governor is still dealing with the NMS problems.
Do solemnly swear that the evidence I shall give before this committee in respect of the matters before the committee shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. So help me God. Table the following documents before the committee: management responses and accompanying annexures on the reports of the Auditor General on the financial statements for financial years 2020, 2021, 2021, 2022, and receiver of revenue statement for financial year 2021, 2022 for the County Executive of Nairobi. The documents are here.
Auditor General, have you been able to review the annexures and records that have been tabled by the Governor?
Thank you, Chair. The documents were received the responses and documents were received on 22nd April 2024, and we've been able to review.
Are you able to prosecute? Is there any reason why we should not proceed today?
No, Chair.
Clerk of the Senate, can you confirm that we got our copies in good time?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I do confirm that we got our copies within the timelines that have been set by the committee.
Okay. I think then we proceed, but we must first deal with the issue of the summons.
I don't know, is there a challenge that we should know? Because we don't want when we appear next, you'll also having been... I'm not canvassing for anybody to be employed, but I'm asking to ensure the comfort of the committee through the chair, because I know the stakes of Nairobi are quite high, but this is one of the counties where there is quite a number of acting, and one of the critical person is a county secretary, which essentially should be running most of the issues within the county, of course, under your guidance. Can you give us the comfort? Thank you, Chair.
Governor?
Chair, I want to give you the comfort. There's nothing wrong, Senator Cherargei. The confirmations are done by the Public Service Board, and that process is ongoing, especially for directors, as well as assistant directors. That process is ongoing. The rest is a function of the County Assembly, where we presented a County Secretary who didn't make it, and we shall be issuing one more soon through the process. So please be comforted that everything is all right in Nairobi. Thank you, Chair.
I think as we progress, we will be able to establish whether them being in acting positions impairs their ability to render advice and to do the duties that they've been employed to do. And I think if we get to that point, as a Senate, we can give directives on what ought to be done. Senator Gataya.
Just a small concern. I don't know whether it's supposed to be a small concern or just something of His Excellency, my good friend Sakaja. You know, quite a number of counties borrow from you. You know, Nairobi is an exemplary, and you have in your composition carrying a contingent of so many men against about 3 women of. I mean, what is it that you are not able to bring Nairobi into parity with the other counties?
I could say the same about the committee.
Yeah? Governor, you are treading on dangerous grounds. You are not the one, the committee has not been summoned. It's a governor Nairobi who's been summoned.
Chair, there are actually more women than men serving in Nairobi, or who we've come with the specific sectors relating to this, the matters before us.
My Chair.
Senator Nyoka.
Excellency Governor, most things are about perception. The perception that I see in front of you is that you've got 19 men with 2 ladies. 3. And you know you are a defender of devolution, so am I the one who's confused or is it you?
Chair, actually, it's a great affirmation.
Your order, Governor Senator Dulo.
When he was in the Senate, he used to be a female gender activist, if that is the word I should use. I don't know whether the situation has changed when he became the governor. Thank you.
Chair, I still am a he for she. It's an affirmation. The women, their sectors don't have audit issues. The ones with issues are the men. That's why they're the ones here. So the women are actually doing very well in the county. If you look at the CEC actually composition of Nairobi, we're above 30%. If you look at the chief officers as well, we are above the minimum threshold in terms of gender, and very serious dockets such as the CFO Finance Chair.
I think, members, going forward, I'm convinced that we must specify to the governors who should come before the Senate, and that then will help us to test whether their statements on gender inclusion is just the women have just been given catering roles or they've been given substantive roles. And Clerk, I think going forward, we must make it clear that for these proceedings, the CC Finance, the Chief Officer Finance, the Director Revenue, the Head of Procurement, the Head of HR, the County Secretary, and specific functions. So from there we can tell whether it's just lip service.
Apologize for the inconvenience this may cause. The committee deliberated on the content of this letter and resolved to issue summons to compel the appearance of the governor of Nairobi. Chair, if you allow me, I'll read the summons that were issued to compel the appearance of the governor.
Proceed.
Honorable Sakaja Arthur Johnson, Governor, Nairobi City County. Whereas pursuant to Article 1 to 29, 7 and 8 of the Constitution and Standing Order 193 2B of the Senate Standing Orders, the Senate County Public Accounts Committee is mandated to inter alia examine the reports of the Auditor General on the annual accounts of the county governments And whereas by letter reference SEN stroke DGSC stroke CPAC stroke 2024 stroke 031 dated 14th March 2024, the committee invited you to appear before it on Monday, 8th April 2024, to submit responses to queries raised for the financial years 2021-2022 and 2020-2021 and 21-22. The letter further directed you to submit advance copies of written responses to the queries on or before 1st April 2024, which request you failed to honor. And further, by reference NCC stroke CS stroke PAA stroke 309 dated 27th March 2024, which was received on 5th April 2024, you requested the committee to reschedule the meeting slated for 8th April 2024 to a future date. And further, whereas Article 125 of the Constitution and Sections 18 and 20 of the Parliamentary Powers and Privileges Act empowers the Senate and any of its committees to summon any person to appear before it for the purpose of giving evidence or providing information. And further, whereas Section 23(1)A of the Parliamentary Powers and Privileges Act states that no public officer shall refuse to produce before Parliament or a committee any book, paper, record, or document. Now, therefore, the County Public Accounts Committee summons you to appear before the committee in person at a meeting to be held on Monday, 6th May 2024 at Shimba Hills Hall, KCC. Of course, the venue was changed to this committee room 9. The committee further directs that you provide written responses to the Auditor General's report for the County Executive of Nairobi for the financial years 2020-21, 21-22, at least 15 days in advance of your scheduled appearance. You are further directed to submit the said copies of the written responses to the committee's queries to both the committee and to the Office of the Auditor General. Take note that should you fail to attend before the committee on the date and time specified in this summons or produce the documentation required by the committee, 1, the committee may impose upon you a fine not exceeding 500,000 shillings or may order for your arrest pursuant to Section 19(1) and 3, respectively, of the Parliamentary Powers and Privileges Act 2017. 2, you may also be guilty of an offence in terms of Section 27(1)A, I, and C, 2, respectively, of the Parliamentary Powers and Privileges Act, for which you shall be liable on conviction to a fine not exceeding 200,000 shillings, or to imprisonment for a term not exceeding 6 months, or to both such fine and imprisonment. And 3, you may also be liable to be found in breach of Section 23(1) of the Powers and Privileges Act, which in turn may constitute the passing of a House resolution pursuant to Section 23(3) of the Powers and Privileges Act. Given under my hand for and on behalf of the County Public Accounts Committee on 15th day of April 2024. It was signed by the Clerk of the Senate, J.M. Nyegenya CBS. Chair,
who was served?
It was served on the Governor of Nairobi.
It was served on the Governor and acknowledged as such.
Yes.
Fine. In our summons, we requested or demanded 2 things: the appearance of the Governor in person. The Governor is here in person. Secondly, we demanded a response to the issues raised by the Office of the Auditor General. The Governor has tabled his written responses and supporting annexures. I think to allow us to progress, the only thing I will require of the Governor is to go on record as to the reasons for his non-appearance in the last meeting. I think that's important for it to go on record. And then we can decide whether that is satisfactory and whether that will allow us to proceed. Governor.
Thank you very much, Chair. On the 2 dates mentioned, the last date, Chair, I had traveled and had indicated that I requested for a scheduling of the meeting. I was out of the country for that week. And then I saw the summons, Chair. But that notwithstanding, I'm happy to be here today. It was a prior scheduled visit that I couldn't move. That's why I appealed for the indulgence of the committee. On that date, I think it was the 8th of April. And I think the earlier one was the 14th of March, Chair.
So, Clerk, in the summons, I think we must add a third demand, because you've demanded appearance in person, you've demanded written responses. We must also demand a written explanation for the non-appearance, including evidence of travel or evidence of commitment, because sometimes governors might just choose not to appear before the committee. So going forward, whenever we issue summons for non-appearance, that evidence must be put before the committee in writing, including any travel documents or travel-related documentation. Honorable members, the Powers and Privileges Act says where a person summoned does not appear, or where a person summoned appears and does not satisfy the committee may impose upon the person such a fine, and it's prescribed in the Parliamentary Powers and Privileges Act. Is there any member who is dissatisfied with the explanation by the governor? Should we consider the fines that are provided for in the Parliamentary Powers and Privileges Act? Senator Onyonka?
Chair, my opinion is that if the governor is able to present documents showing that he traveled and all that, I think then we can do a review.
Senator Mofaya?
Chair, I think His Excellency Governor Sakaja has been a member of Parliament for quite some time, and he's very thorough on some issues. I don't know whether his absence of failure to appear before the committee was deliberate. So I think I agree with his presentation that he might have traveled, but of course I didn't go through your ruling that he has to prevent that's evidence that he was out of the country. So I think we should give him some benefit of doubt for that matter.
Senator Cherarkei?
I think, Chair, the essence on powers and privileges is, and even the principles of natural justice, is there should be compelling reasons. And I hope the governor will provide us with the traveling documents, which I think it should not be a problem, as to why he did not appear. Of course, as a ranking member of Parliament who has been there for some time, I don't think he takes Parliament in vain. He must take Parliament seriously. And I want to believe, because he was my chair in Labour and Social Services, he used to teach me that Parliament must be respected. So I think, Chair, there should be compelling reasons, the provision of traveling documents, Chair, and any other documentation. And then from there, the ruling can be made. And like in the other county the other day, if there are no compelling reasons, then we go for full force of the law. But if there are compelling reasons, then it can mitigate the consequence and applications of powers and privileges. I thank you, Chair.
Senator Methu?
Chair, I know we are really pressed of time.
And remember, I'd asked for comments on those who are not satisfied with the governor's explanation. Proceed, Senator Methu.
Not necessarily not being satisfied, but I wanted to mention that and Governor Sakaja has been a member of Parliament. He knows that Parliament operates on its procedures and precedents. And the governor has said that he traveled. Last week, Honorable Chair, we were seized with the matter of a governor who had traveled. And from what we gathered, his reasons of travel were actually very compelling, because he had gone to pray. He had gone to Mecca to pray, if I actually remember very well. So I thought those reasons were compelling, but they didn't satisfy this committee that he should have left such an important legislative business of coming to appear before the Senate to go and pray. We actually fined that man. We told him that he should have prayed here, appeared before the Senate, and we move on. So Governor Sakaja has not even told us why he had traveled. At least that governor told us why he had traveled. He had traveled for prayers.
Is it your proposal that we impose the fine provided for in the Parliamentary Powers and Privileges Act?
Chair,
it is a precedent that has been set already by this committee.
Okay. Maybe to avoid a debate on it, remember you must be referring to the Isiolo case. When the clerk read out the chronology of events, it turned out that there were 5 invitations that had not been honored in a span of 1 year. I think in the case of Governor Sakaja, it was one invitation. So that perhaps might make a distinction between the two.
So in that case, then I drop my proposal of finding him.
Okay.
The other one had even gone ahead and disparaged the committee, but Senator Sakaja has never.
Senator Mariam Omar?
Chair, me, I have a different opinion, because when you write, when we wrote someone, it means that we are not satisfied with his response, that he has not attended. And today, when he come, there is no evidence that there is not a travel to wherever he's traveled. So I have different opinion, and also to make Senate to be having at least a teeth to bite with some, because when we write a summon letter, I don't think we have to debate on that. We totally go on some issues. Sure.
Thank you, Senator Mariam Omar. Senator Sifuna?
Yeah, before Senator Sifuna,
Senator Dulo.
the statements made by Senator Methu should be expunged from this Hansard, because we didn't find, or rather we didn't even tell Governor for Isiolo he should not have traveled to Mecca, he should have prayed there. That statement never actually, we never presented that statement. So I think...
Chair, on point of order, Senator Dulo is out of order. You cannot gag. The freedom of opinion and expression is in the Constitution.
No, I'm on a point of order. How can you
Fine, members, let's, I believe we are probably saying the same things, and I agree with Senator Dulo that those reasons alluded to by Senator Methu were not tabled.
No.
And that's why I have said that in our summons, we must demand.
But Mr. Chairman Grau said that it was not tabled. The letter that was written to this committee by the county secretary said that the governor had traveled to Mecca for pilgrimage. That is on record.
Unfortunately not. So, members, just to ensure that our proceedings are orderly, going forward, we have already directed the clerk that where a summon is issued to compel appearance, then the summoned officer or the summoned governor must in writing state the reasons for an appearance and provide evidence of other commitments for the consideration of the committee, so that it is not an oral presentation that then generates debate. Senator Sifuna.
Chair, for me, my concern is that we are running out of time. As we were briefed during the meeting with the Auditor General, we have 55 unresolved issues, Governor, in the financial year ending June 2022 alone. So we'll abide the decision of the committee and beg that we move to discuss the more substantive report in detail.
Honourable members, having listened to your submissions, I think there have been a mixed opinion, which is perfectly in order, because a committee that does not have differing opinions is like a committee of sheep, and we are not a committee of sheep. But having weighed the responses, under the circumstances, Governor Sakaja, within this committee, I'm not talking about the totality of the Senate, in this committee, in this case, he was a first offender. I'm not talking about the Energy Committee, I'm not talking about those other manenos, but within this committee, this summons, the governor was a first offender, and I will therefore direct that we proceed with the meeting.
Chair, if you allow me.
Governor?
If you allow me just
and
briefly.
Be careful not to reopen a Pandora's box.
No, I don't want to open any box. Chair, as Senator Cherargei alluded, I have been a ranking member of the Senate and the National Assembly, and I want to give assurance to the committee that I understand and respect the place of the Senate. As you've given a comparison, mine was a summon after one invite. Others are 5 missed invites. This is my 13th appearance before the Senate committees. On Friday, I was with Senator Onyonka on another committee. So let senators be assured that I do respect the place and the role of the Senate for oversight. I had no reason not to want to come, especially given the fact that the financial years we're looking at, years where I was here with you in the Senate. They're not my time in office. That notwithstanding, government continues in perpetuity, and Chair, I'll always be available for the Senate. I think there's a perception that was created that I have a problem coming to Senate. Chair, I love coming to Senate. In fact, over the past few days, I've been here a lot looking at the improvement works I've done around here. And I hope I'm the first one to use this committee room as in terms of governance. So please have that assurance that the reason why we've been able even to catch up to this financial year. I've come here on audit for 2017-18, 18-19, 19-20. We're now looking at 2021 and 21-22. Means I've come even more times than my predecessors combined, you know. And so I'm happy that even after today, we should be able now to be on time with us, even at the assembly.
It's important for the record, and it's also important for the House to allay that impression of non-cooperation. Members, I want us to go to the work
because you have said
before
this
us.
for the record. Just 1 second, Honourable Chair.
Senator Methu.
For the 2 times that I have invited, because I'm also a chair of a committee, for the 2 times that I have invited the governor for Nairobi on matters to deal with Nairobi Water and Sanitation Company, he has appeared. So I confirm that what he has said is actually true.
I recall in the last parliament, the now governor for Makueni, Senator Mutula Kilonzo Jr., said we should be very worried when governors come before committees happily. Let us proceed. Let us proceed. We shall proceed as follows. We've got 3 reports before us. We have spent time with the Auditor General looking at the issues that have been resolved and issues that are outstanding. Unfortunately, probably 95% of the issues raised by the Auditor General are still outstanding. We have taken time to go through the receipt of revenue statement, and we have taken the decision that we shall not prosecute the receipt of revenue statements today, because it has been brought to our attention that there is an ongoing inquiry in the County Assembly on the issue of systems and on-source revenue. And I think it would make sense for the Senate to allow the County Assembly to conclude that process and for the Senate to be informed by the report of the County Assembly. Because receipt of revenue is not just about bookkeeping and IPSAS compliance. We must also look at the environment. We must look at the systems, must look at the processes, and we must look at the procedures. So we'll stand down the receiver of revenue report today. Secondly, we have looked at the expenditure report, and there is a huge issue around pending bills, close to 100 billion Kenya shillings. The bulk of the pending bills relate to legal fees and statutory deductions, particularly pensions benefits. The committee has also taken the position that we shall first consider the reports of the various task forces established by Nairobi City County to help us understand the background and get a better picture on those accounts payables. But with respect to legal fees, the committee has resolved that we shall engage experts to help us review the contingent liabilities, especially the issues that have been flagged by the Office of the Auditor General, so that, again, it is not just a conversation around debit and credit, but it is a conversation that covers lawfulness and prudence of some of those accounts payables. So ROR, we defer, and the conversation on legal fees and account payables relating to statutory deductions, we will have a specific meeting to address that. Because we... Yes. Governor, the task force, you established various task forces to look into pending bills. Maybe you could just let us know what those task forces were, because my intention is at the end of it, we must direct that we share with the Senate copies of those reports. Without even going into the details of the reports, just tell us, you set up this task force, they've reported, the reports are available, and then we can agree on when those reports can be presented to the Senate.
Thank you very much, Chair. Chairman, as you rightly put, when we got into office in August 2022, we found a huge pending bill in Nairobi. The outstanding liabilities were close to 100 billion. And out of that, 21 billion was legal fees owing to different lawyers. Others were decretable amounts, and others were ongoing cases. Chair, because of that, 21 billion is higher than the equitable share that Nairobi receives in a year. It is twice the own source revenue. And many of them seemed, suspicious. And so I set up a task force to look into the pending, the outstanding liabilities in the, office of the county attorney. It was headed by Kamodho Eganjo. I brought in different professions in that task force. It wasn't just lawyers. Of course, there was the president of the LSK then as a member of the task force.
Senator Cherokee?
Well, I appreciate, Chair, I don't know, because when you look at constitutional petition E003 of 2023 at Kitale High Court, it ruled that the formation of verification pending bills committee should not be done by counties, and it was declared unconstitutional. It should be exclusive domain of the Office of the Auditor General. So, Chair, while Governor is doing a lot in informing the committee what he has done, I don't know the implication of such ruling to what the Governor has already been informed, because the reading of this petition, and even Professor Nixon's also ruling, casts a shadow on the formation of verification committees. Because if it is unconstitutional now, where does it leave us? Because we might also be treading on because we are also quasi-judicial process. So I don't know, with that declaration of unconstitutional on formation of verification committees by governors, I don't know where does it leave us, because as far as I know, in this petition E003 of 2023, constitutional petition, there is no indication that one has been appealed. So I don't know where it leaves us or the implication. Maybe that clarification.
Senator Sifuna?
Chair, I would really have a wish that Senator Cherargei allows the governor to complete that statement. Just allow the governor to complete the statement, then we will bring in those questions.
Even though Senator Cherargei has a valid point, because a presentation has been made before this committee by the legal department on the implications of that ruling. And if you recall, Vice Chair, the judge did not entirely throw out the work that had been done by task forces. There was a rider that the Auditor General needs to be involved in validation. But going forward, I think there was what do you do with the task forces already established, and how do you proceed going forward? So there was that distinction. So maybe when the governor completes his analogy, we will now establish whether he's been setting up task forces after that ruling. I believe that these were done before that ruling was rendered.
Yes.
But if we are wrong, you can correct us.
Thank you. Thank you for your guidance, Chair. So I was explaining, when you find this huge pending bill, I set up this team, and I didn't want it just to be people of one profession, especially the legal profession, because that is what we were looking at with respect to the lawyers here. And so we had a few lawyers in that task force. We had supply chain management expert, one Mwenze. We had accountants, public finance experts from PKF, that is David Kabeberi. We had a tax master. And so the task force started their work, and they were reviewing. They were able to give us a preliminary report. But in the middle of that work is when the ruling, that's why I'm grateful my senator has asked that I conclude. That ruling came out, which more or less outlawed these task forces, saying that they usurp the power of the Auditor General. Of course, as Nairobi, we don't agree with that, and we've been exploring how to, because these task forces help us make administrative decisions. It is not an audit, a financial audit, like what the Auditor General would do. In fact, from the 21 billion, so far they had actually come to how it can be reduced to 10 billion. They had given us advice on how to restructure the office of the county attorney, just like the state law office. Just based on that preliminary, report, I was able to engage the SRC to allow us to retain advocates in-house who would reduce our reliance with external advocates. If you look at the bill of 21 billion, if the SRC allows us to have, 6 years post-admission, pay them 250,000 or so, then many of the things that don't need to go to court will not go to court. And so we're currently in the process of recruiting around 50 counsel to be in different sectors. Most of our matters are land issues, disputes that don't need to make it there. Having said that, when that process stopped, we asked our internal team, led by the Office of the County Attorney, to review files. They looked at, as of last week, 144 files that they've been able to look at. The initial 44, for instance, because earlier, the decision on how much should be charged was a very subjective decision made by an individual. But we've seen that when it's a team, for instance, the reduction from 5.6 billion to 2.4, I think, Solicitor General, County Solicitor, 2.4 billion, for instance, and they're still ongoing. Last week they were in Nevasha, just focusing on that. And so we'll continue with the internal process, but so that, and if you look at that ruling, so that we don't waste taxpayers' money, the task forces need to conclude what they did. Now, the legal quagmire we'll have is then, will the outcome of that task force be recognizable based on that ruling? And that's the advice we shall be seeking from the Senate. What we want really is to have some order and control with these liabilities from lawyers, And I would want, I'd urge even my senator to guide. If you look at some of the amounts charged, for instance, you have one advocate charging the county more than 10% of its own source revenue. I can give an example of a case if you allow me to. Somebody took us to court, took an MS and the county to court on the renovations at Uhuru Park, that were being done. That advocate then, who represented the county, charged the county 1.3 or so billion based on the value of Uhuru Park, as if Uhuru Park was being sold or was going. And you see, or another matter where there's a dispute between two, in an estate, a county estate, of an increase in rent. The entire quantum of that is 30,000 shillings, but the advocate charges you 60 million, shillings. So we'd really want advice on how to do, because I've been very hesitant to settle such fees. But that's the process. I've only set up one task force. That's the only one that we'd set up. The county had earlier set up one under PLO Lumumba. That was during the time of Governor Mike Sonko, that looked at the outstanding liabilities. That task force, the report was being utilized during that time. When you got in, instead of putting everything in the task forces, every sector had to take or to validate the outstanding liabilities through internal audit. So the internal auditor, the chief officer, had to say, yes, this is what, and sign off. Now, when you ask them to sign off, automatically it reduces, incidentally. So through that process, again, from the office of the internal auditor, there's a reduction in those outstanding liabilities. But by head of that,
we said we will not get into the details because my question is, what can the Senate consume at the moment out of those task forces? Is there a report that can be laid before the Senate that can guide us in considering the matters that are before us?
Yes, the earlier report was concluded. That was a PLO report from 2017. That one is available to be tabled.
The Kamotho Waiganjo report?
That one was not concluded. That's the one which we have a preliminary report, which we can still share. And that's the matter which we want to see whether do we appeal it, the ruling from Transoya. That's the one which only reached preliminary. There's no final report.
Let's not mix up the two issues, because we are clear that as a governor, nothing stops you from having some people advising you.
Yes.
So if the task forces are advisory, I think that is within the law. But if it's in competition with the mandate of the OAG, that's a completely different matter. So what are you able to table before the Senate?
As of now, Chair, I'm able to table the preliminary report of the Kamotho Waiganjo Task Force as we engage them to conclude. So we had paused that process.
You can present that to the Senate within the next 7 days?
Yes, sir. Yes, I can. Within the next 7 minutes, even, I can present that.
Let's make it 7 days to be orderly, but if you can do it in 7 minutes, the better, so that members that can guide us in our conversation and in our approach towards the pending bills on legal fees.
Yes, Chair. And also, Chair, if you allow me to take this opportunity to correct a misconception. I saw, and I'm happy our friends from the Fourth Estate are here. Of course, we don't take that as sort of admissible in the House. That what was flagged was how 11 lawyers are owed 10 billion. But what was reported is that 11 lawyers were paid 10 billion. That is impossible, Chair. We would not be able to pay salaries. You know, that is our entire on-source revenue. In that financial year, for instance, we only paid 287 million shillings. So thank you for allowing me the opportunity to just to clarify that. But I'm sure when you get to that financial year, we can go to the details of this payment.
Senator Sifuna.
Governor, is it your position that a lawyer cannot rack up 1 billion in bills? Especially where there's... just a minute.
Yeah.
Because in your annexures, you'll find there are certain law firms, and we will get into the details, certain law firms that appear to have preference in terms of getting jobs from the county government. And if you add the multiplicity of the suits that they've represented, it is possible for amounts to reach that high.
Yes, but not on a single matter.
Yes.
You know, when it's one matter, and if you look at the value for money to an NG, possibly a matter that didn't even need to go to court, there was no loss on the county. For instance, the case I've given of Uhuru Park, you know, paying that person 1.5 billion, which is even more than the amount it takes us to feed children for a whole year. You know, it might be right legally, but morally, you know, there's a conflict. That is why I would want advice, you know, to pay one person.
I think the point is we are dealing with a profession that is regulated.
Yeah.
We've got the remuneration, advocates remuneration order and the laws that relate to that. So we need to be careful in the statements that we make, because they must be within the law. But of course, the role of this committee is about prudence and responsibility.
Yes.
Those are the principles of public finance, and it's a constitutional principle.
Yes.
Prudence and responsibility in utilization of public resources. So we need to ask ourselves whether the rules of certain professions introduce imprudence and irresponsibility in resource utilization. But members, since we have said we are going to have a separate hearing, maybe we can limit our contributions towards just the generalities rather than the details.
Chair, you know, I have to disclose that I am a former council member of the Law Society of Kenya. And whereas we agree that there are matters that are just manifestly, questionable and they should be looked into, there's also been this blanket condemnation of lawyers doing business with the county. You will find in most of these cases, there are letters of instruction, Governor, that originate from the county. There's correspondence between the government and those lawyers. There is even agreements on fees between the county government and some of these lawyers. Some of these matters have actually been taxed before the taxing masters in court, and with the rider that was given by Senator Omtata during the briefing, that if a taxation has resulted from a proper taxation and it was not a consent entered into between officials of your government and the lawyer, then really we should not demonize everybody. Because I also would agree that I cannot pay 1 billion shillings for a matter such as the one that you've raised of Uhuru Park. But I am hoping that those task forces have done the job of isolating the matters where an advocate was properly instructed, they did the job, because they're also very honest young lawyers trying to make a living in this city, and we shouldn't lump them together. And if it has gone through the process of taxation, Governor, and it's a proper taxation, not one that ended up with a consent order, then really those monies are payable. And it doesn't matter how long we run away from them, they should be paid.
Just hold on, Governor. Yeah. Senator Onyonka.
Thank you, Chair.
Then Senator Charake.
Governor, I'm going to ask you just one question, and then the information I got is that Kisii County, before we had a task force which had been raised, which had been put together by the governor. In fact, there had been, and I want to raise up the bell on AOG, that actually on most of these pending bills, the OAG had already issued a report in most of the counties. What happened to that report? And the second issue, this comes to the question that Honorable my Secretary General has talked about, SG. This same committee sat here and we had a bill of 946 million from Machakos County for 4 years ago. I still haven't got an explanation how Machakos County got into a pending bill with the lawyers. And these lawyers actually were only 2 firms. I'm yet to get an explanation. So even when we are not passing aspersions on the legal fraternity, but the truth is most of these con jobs have been with the legal fraternity. I mean, let's just accept it. That's the way it is. So I need an explanation before we can even raise issues with the governor, because all these quirky deals have been done before even he came to office, but I know he needs to be answerable to that. At the same time, I would love to see what the Auditor General actually gave in terms of the reports and the audit you gave on most of these. Are we together? Yes, pending bills that need to be paid to the legal firms, because I know that Honorable Sifuna may not raise this issue, but Honorable Sifuna, I can tell you truthfully, I know friends of mine who've siphoned off 800 million from City Hall and they laugh at us.
Okay, let's not mix issues. And as you reflect also on, I think, must have been Kilifi and the element of internal collusion. Senator Cherarke.
Maybe to Governor, I was worried when I saw that there were some lawyers who are being owed by the county such amount. And it is good you are put on record because I saw something on Twitter sometimes back or ex-corporation. But since you have legal counsel or a county solicitor and county attorney, Governor, I don't know whether county has contested those legal fees. Because as your senator has indicated rightfully, the taxation, taxing master and what have you, so to allay fears, and by the way, the country should know that lawyers can be owed $1 billion because it depends with the value of what they are doing, and they are being guided by advocation remuneration order, which is regulated. But my only concern in prudent use as a county, have you gone ahead and maybe contested through the legal process, maybe moving to court, and your county solicitor and county attorney is here? Have you put in any measures to ensure it is being reviewed downwards so that it does not appear? By the way, Chair, it is not an offense that lawyers are being owed such huge colossal amount, but have you in the process contested or raised within the legal framework that is provided for the review of such amount so that you protect also the resources?
Okay, I'll take the governor's very brief response so that we don't get into the substance when you have said that we will have a special hearing on that. I think the governor is to provide us with the preliminary report. Then we can take a view. But Governor, I'll allow you just a minute to respond to the concerns of the senators.
Thank you, Chair. And I'm happy that the committee shares in our concerns because of the issue of prudence, on how we use these resources. Chair, I don't agree with blanket condemnation of the legal fraternity. In fact, the legal fraternity has really been helpful, for us to exercise our mandate and to deliver to the people. But there are certain cases, and the report, I'm just going through some of the interim recommendations. It highlights certain cases that are really just outliers, and those cases are really not acceptable. Yeah, and that is why in that task force I had the LSK represented, and the president of the LSK was there. In fact, even as if we refresh that team, the current president should take that position. I think the position is not an individual, but represent the fraternity. So the interest of lawyers is also looked at. There are so many cases, if you look at it, Chair, even if there's agreement from the county, sometimes some of them look like collusion, that take us to court on this matter and then we shall represent ourselves like this. Or if somebody is saying, the bill is 1.5 billion, and the county says, no, that is too much. Reduce it to 1.45. You've done nothing. And so, in fact, at some point, I would really want this investigated. Yeah, because these legal payments were used for a long time to just, bankrupt many counties and to siphon a lot of money. Many we have contested, Senator Cherarke, and we've been awarded costs actually on many matters. Some of the lawyers have helped us save our land. That was, that has been taken. If you look at like the Kamudi issue, some of these lawyers have helped us, restore public assets. We've been able to recover so much based on them. but there must be some objectivity. And then how is it sustainable then going forward? In as much as, yes, you have an advocate's remuneration order and those, provisions of the law, we can enter into service level agreements, with some of these lawyers. We can put them on retainers. Some of them, we can have them tied in different clusters based on expertise and the subject matter. Because you will never see a private sector company, whether it is EABL or Safaricom, being charged certain fees because they have entered into certain service level agreements, which is what we want to move to. So, Chair, I'll be very happy when we have that discussion for us to say what improvements then we're making in the Office of the County Attorney, what proposals we have. When I asked SRC, for instance, to allow me to pay advocates a certain amount, they asked for the justification. And the justification was the pending bill, 21 billion. By increasing the salary of a few people, we can, avoid that kind of exposure. And moving forward, how do we strengthen counties, law offices? How do we have, even when they come in as interns or as, what do you call it, when you have the School of Law, as pupils, and have pupil masters at the county to help us. We've realized a lot of our issues can be solved by arbitration, that they don't even need to go to court. But when they go to court, the amounts that we are charged, the example I gave you is actually a court case, Nairobi Beach Club versus NCC, for instance, Chair. The problem was that the rent for the restaurant went from 20,000 to 60,000. The tenant sued NCC. NCC instructed a lawyer. The fee note of the lawyer is 105 million because of an increase of rent of 40,000, Chair. It is not a conveyancing. The restaurant is not being sold. So such cases are so many. And that is why they need to be looked at so that we can be prudent. Even if we must pay lawyers.
Thank you, Governor. I think that members, we have agreed we'll have a special session on this. I think let's just close it by saying that we, as a Senate, we cannot override other laws that have already been established. The acts of parliament that govern remuneration of advocates, the Senate cannot rewrite it. The interest of the Senate would be to ensure that there's no collusion to defeat justice. The interest of the Senate would also be to ensure that the county is not losing due to inaction. And we have seen that the biggest component or a big component of those legal fees is interest, avoidable interest. And the interest of the Senate will be to ensure that there is prudence and responsibility. And that is why the County Attorneys Act was passed. And I think when we have that other conversation, we'll be asking for you to demonstrate to what extent you have complied with the requirements of the County Attorneys Act and whether that is bringing about the much needed reforms and savings for Nairobi City County. Members, time is ticking. Allow us to now go straight to the report of the Auditor General. Governor, in our review of the report of the Auditor General, there is a matter that touches on a very live issue, which is disaster and emergency management in Nairobi City County. You will find it in the report of the Auditor General, and the report that I have has it as page 19. Page 19. Okay, so we'll proceed as follows. We'll start with the financial year 2021-2022, and then we will go back to 2020-2021. In the financial year 2021-2022, the Auditor General has raised a concern on failure to establish Nairobi City Disaster and Emergency Management Council. We know that we are having a live problem at the moment. We have, I don't know whether to call them an emergency or a disaster, in the form of the floods that are ravaging the country, and particularly the capital city of Nairobi. In the wisdom of the County Assembly of Nairobi, in 2015, the County Assembly passed the Nairobi City Disaster and Emergency Management Act. Amongst its provisions, it required the establishment of a disaster management council. It required the appointment of a director for disaster management. It required the establishment of a county disaster management fund And it also required the processing of a county disaster management plan. I think this is a very live issue. It would be out of place for us to be discussing how face masks were bought in 2020 without starting with the issues that are current and live and have found their way in the report of the Auditor General. So, Auditor General, please read your finding there, and then the Governor may respond and perhaps give assurance to the residents of Nairobi that the law that was passed by the Assembly is being implemented as envisaged by the members of the County Assembly. Are we okay, Senator Methu? We're on the same page?
Yeah, we are.
We are.
Check with your neighbor.
22. It's on 22.
The neighbor is okay.
Yeah. There, go page 19 there.
Okay, yeah, I think it's because we have decided to jump into the inner pages, but this is a very important live matter that we need to deal with, and it's in the Auditor General's report. Then we'll come back to the bookkeeping issues. So we proceed, Auditor General.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. Report of the Auditor General on County Executive of Nairobi City for the year ended 30th June 2022. Page 19, number 9. Failure to establish Nairobi City Disaster and Emergency Management Council. Note 9 to the financial statements reflects the other grants and payments totaling Kenya shillings 799,090,730, which includes emergency relief and refugee assistance civil contingency reserves of Kenya shillings 157,830,690. However, a review of the department's records revealed that the management did not establish a disaster and emergency management council, contrary to Section 4AF of the Nairobi City Disaster and Emergency Management Act 2015, which provides that there should be a disaster and emergency management council in the county, which should be responsible for settling relevant policies, approve plans, and oversee the implementation of risk reduction, preparedness, response, and recovery activities by all the county agencies and other agencies performing roles related to disaster management. Further, the county did not have clear guidelines on what constitutes disaster, emergency, pandemic, and which sector should coordinate this in case of any emergency. Absence of a disaster and emergency council may result in uncoordinated, poorly planned, lack of accountability, and inadequate facilities, which may result to a loss of funds. In the circumstances, management was in breach of the law. Chair, thank you, Chair.
Okay, Governor, you may respond, and perhaps just start with what you had in your management response. Just read out your response.
Thank you, Chair. I have my copies.
Yeah, we should be seeing what you are seeing. So refer us to the appendix that has the memos.
It should be in the files. Volume 3. Chief Officer from the CC giving a background or rather an update. Maybe I can just take you through the long and short of it, Chair.
Yeah, just tell us what, because a law was passed by the County Assembly and assented to. The law has not been repealed, it's not been suspended in court. So it is the law as it is, not the law as it ought to be.
Chair, from 20...
Order.
Sorry, yeah.
So your responsibility is to implement the law as it is. And if you need certain amendments, you cause that to be done through the County Assembly. You are in the executive, you are not in the legislature. So what is the problem of implementing the law as it is?
Thank you. Chair, from 2015, that law has actually not been implemented since it was passed because of several shortcomings that the law has. I may not agree with the assertion by the Auditor General that the lack of a council may result in uncoordinated policy, because this is specific to Nairobi. So Nairobi that has a law providing for that council. In many other counties don't have it, and it doesn't mean that they are uncoordinated or poorly planned. Chair, we reviewed. In fact, when we got in, we asked for a review of all the laws that have been passed within the county. If you remember, when I was senator, together with the senator from Makueni then, current Governor Mutula, we proposed a disaster risk management law that passed in the Senate that was going to create coordination not just within the county, but between the counties and the national government for better management of disasters, and not just management of disasters, but also mitigation, advance warning, early warning signs, advocacy around it, training young people, letting wananchi know what to do in case of an emergency, etc. While we've been pushing for that to be done, we've in the process that the county has been undertaking, if you look at the last memo, has been, first of all, creating justifying why we need to have a semi-autonomous body to deal with all disaster risk management. They looked at the shortcomings of that certain law in terms of composition of that council, in terms of how it relates to other entities that are not within the county. As a former legislator, I feel that actually the Senate law would be superior and would actually give us, a better foundation in dealing with disasters. You find that it goes against Mwongozo proposals in terms of having a very top-heavy council chaired by the deputy governor. It doesn't align with the current structures in the county. You find the chief officer is not mentioned there, yet the chief officer, disaster management, is the one who really is the core fulcrum of coordination. It only looks at fires, mainly. Nairobi has the more disasters. If you look at what we're dealing with currently, it's not just fires, it is floods, and there are many different types of disasters. So, Chair, the process and even the cabinet memo that came to us on the repeal of the law, which is what now the cabinet returned and said, instead of just repealing the law, create the new legal framework you're proposing, because, Chair, there's a doctrine of implied repeal when you bring a new law that then takes over the law that was there before. And so we're working on a new legislative framework that is similar to what I had proposed in the Senate together with the Governor Mutula, that even then had been poached by national government and presented through the leader of majority, Governor, what's his name? Honorable Ishungwa, that is before Parliament. And so we really need to review this. Chair, if you look at what's happening today in Nairobi, we're dealing with a huge crisis. We have 10 camps. We had 31 camps. We have 10 camps currently. We've lost close to 20 people in the city. Different sectors are expending their budgets. And that even convinces us why you don't need necessarily a fund. For instance, today, in all of these camps, people are having lunch and dinner prepared from the county, by dish in a county. That is not in the disaster budget. That is a sector budget within wellness and nutrition. We are repairing 17 bridges that were washed away. These bridges are in different areas. From Madare, there's a bridge that connects Mukuru Kwanjenga and Lunga Lunga, and children study in the other side. There's a bridge between Kiambiu, where I was, and I've gone to all these places, Chair, connecting Viwandani, and there's Kiambiu and Jerusalem. There's so many bridges that we're repairing. The budget to sort out those bridges ideally should come from that sector, not necessarily from disaster. So we feel that one size-fits-all approach doesn't work. And so the reason that law has not been implemented since 2015 is that it's actually unimplementable. I wish earlier somebody would...
Order, Governor. I'm looking at the Act. What is a problem with the proposed council? Let's start from there. Because the council is chaired by the governor.
The deputy governor.
The council shall consist of the deputy governor, who shall be the chairperson, and then there are various CECs, and then there is the county commissioner, the commandant of police, the Kenya Red Cross, representatives of the public, County Director for Disaster Preparedness, etc., with a view to bringing a multi-agency approach towards disaster planning, coordination, and response. What is essentially wrong with that?
Chair, actually, you know, without even calling it a council, we've been implementing that multi-agency approach. In fact, a few weeks or so ago, I had the regional commander, the county commissioner, and all national government administration officers, the regional police commander, and all his people until OCSs and our sub-county structures. They've already been brought together, and we work in that manner. Last week, I was able also now to rope in the parliamentarians, led by the Senator of Nairobi, the MPs. We want to create such structures that now align with our current structure of government. This one that you have doesn't accord to the structures.
Is the problem that it is chaired by the deputy governor? Or what is the... I'm trying to understand what the problem is, because we do not want response to disasters and emergencies that follow the whims of the governor. And that is why we say public policy should be predictable and consistent. Yes. And so when you can see the law provides for that kind of council, even if there are agencies that wanted to assist Nairobi City County, they would go to the law and they will see the structures created by the law, and it would provide an entry point. They don't have to look for the governor wherever the governor is. So the law is there. The executive cannot repeal the law. It has to ask the assembly to either repeal or amend. So we've got the law as it is. Please just help us understand why we are not implementing the law as it is. You've given us various scenarios that make it unimplementable. But what is a consistent, predictable structure at the moment for managing disasters and emergencies in Nairobi, if not what is provided for in this act? And I'll allow maybe the senators just to put together their thoughts so that you can have one response.